Kelda Roys, candidate for governor, thank you so much for joining me today. Happy to have you here.
Good to be with you, Meredith.
Absolutely. Well, I want to start with, maybe what might be a simple question for some folks, but what's important. So what is your biggest priority if you are elected governor?
It's addressing the affordability crisis by raising wages and lowering costs, especially on those big ticket items like healthcare, housing, childcare, and utilities that are squeezing families.
And, you've ran for governor before. What do you think sets this campaign apart from the one that you previously did?
Well, it's a completely different ballgame, right? We have an authoritarian regime in Washington that is attacking Wisconsinites every single day. And we see that in the devastating healthcare cuts that Tom Tiffany made for his own constituents, the illegal tariffs that are bankrupting our farmers and our small businesses, and the way that the illegal war in Iran is causing havoc for all of us at the gas pump. So we need a governor who will be steady leadership and can make sure to defeat Tom Tiffany in the general.
And you mentioned that healthcare is one of your priorities. It's on your website too. It says that you want to create a true public option. What does that look like? And would that include expanding Badger Care? Because I think that's what a lot of candidates have talked about that are on the Democratic ticket.
Yeah, my plan is very different from that. It takes what's actually working in Wisconsin, which is the coverage that state employees get. So I'm a state senator and I'm covered under the state employee plan. And my health insurance is high quality, it is nonprofit, it is competitively priced. It's not cheap, but it is competitive. And I want it to be available to everyone. So my plan will open up that state plan so that anyone can buy in, not just individuals, but employers as well. I talked to a teacher up in Superior who said that their insurance premiums are going up 38%. So that whole district, nobody's getting a raise, everybody's getting a functional pay cut. I've talked to manufacturing company owners who are struggling to even afford health insurance. It's going to help a lot our school districts, our unions, small businesses and big businesses if they have the option to buy into the state pool.
And how do you do that, or how do you kind of set that up when you're kind of fighting a battle with the federal level and the federal cuts that were done in Washington?
Mm-hmm. Well, the best thing about my plan is that it's Trump-proof. It doesn't rely on permission or funding from the federal government. And that's the challenge we would face with Badger Care expansion. I fought for Badger Care expansion for 16 years. We should have done it. Republicans blocked it. And that was a catastrophic decision. But now Tom Tiffany and Trump have taken that off the table for Wisconsin. And so we shouldn't be promising things to voters that we can't actually deliver on. My plan is something that we can achieve here in Wisconsin.
And another big concern for many voters right now is data centers. It's not only here, it's across the country. What is your stance on data centers, especially as many of them, argue that they're the economic driver of our time?
Well, I believe that the status quo is unacceptable. And we have the richest, most powerful companies in the world just running roughshod over our communities. We can't have that. And that's why I have put forth the strongest plan of any candidate in this race, either party, to immediately stop the unregulated development of data centers. It starts by passing very strong statewide standards to protect our environment, our workers, local control and transparency, as well as all of us as ratepayers to make sure we're not subsidizing data centers. But we don't stop there. We also want to make it end the subsidies for data centers that are going to cost us about $2 billion. Because if a data center wants to come here, they should be paying us for that privilege. My plan would require an upfront payment of hundreds of millions of dollars for every data center, and then we'll use that money to capitalize a public clean energy infrastructure bank and loan that money out to school districts, to municipalities, to make those kinds of necessary renewable energy upgrades that will allow us to get cleaner air, cheaper fuel costs, and have our clean energy goals by 2050 met.
And I want to get into your energy policies, but I do just want to ask you, point blank, do you support a moratorium on data centers? We just saw New York, put one as far as the first statewide one. There, Hong has one that she wants to support a moratorium on data centers. Do you support that, or you just think they need more regulation?
Well, the moratorium bill says we want to pause until regulations are passed. It has almost no support in the legislature. It is not going to pass. So chasing a moratorium that has no politically feasible way of passing is going to let the big tech oligarchs continue doing what they're doing. I think that's unacceptable. I think what we need is immediate, strong standards in place that stop the speculative development, that prevent the exploitation of our water and our natural resources, and that give local residents meaningful control over what happens in their future. Regulation does that. Pipe dreams do not.
So if a local community says no data center,
good. they should have no data centers.
Well, with data centers does come the concern of affordable energy. You touched on this a little bit, but how do you plan to keep utility prices affordable, as they're a big concern for folks?
Well, fortunately, the cheapest and fastest new energy sources to get online are actually clean and renewable sources. It's wind and solar. And in Wisconsin, we're also a great state for geothermal. By investing in those, we can actually bring coal-fired power plants offline and improve human health. Obviously, air quality is a huge driver of health problems. And we can have cleaner and more abundant energy for everyone. We also need PSC commissioners who are going to be watchdogs for consumers and for our environment, and not just, as has happened in the past, have them rubber stamp whatever the utility asks for. And we can require more conservation measures and more efficiency measures so that we're not wasting the energy that we produce. When we increase that grid utilization and we require integration and cooperation amongst utilities, we may find actually we don't have to build a new power plant. We can actually meet that demand within what we already have.
How do you convince folks, though, that shutting down certain coal-fired power plants is the right move, especially when we're having conversations about, the need for energy and more of it as data centers come online?
Well, that is not my decision to make. I'm saying that I know Wisconsinites want to move to clean, green, renewable energy. It is cheaper, it gives us cleaner air, it is healthier, and it is faster. So we want to be doing that as fast as possible. Because remember, Wisconsin doesn't have any fossil fuels. So every lump of coal that we burn, every oil or natural gas that we're burning is coming from out of state, and we are paying more for that than the energy that we can use right here and the energy that we can save through conservation measures.
How do you work across the aisle on that, though? Because, there's some people on the other side of the aisle who don't support renewable energies.
You're absolutely right. But I think this is where the market is really helping us, because do you want to pay more for dirtier fuel? That doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, if you have an option that is cleaner, cheaper, and healthier, and faster, why would you ever go with fossil fuels?
Well, switching gears to education, you've called yourself the public education candidate and you won a major endorsement from WEAC. How does the state fully fund public schools? I feel like I hear almost every single candidate talk about this, while still maintaining a balanced budget and lowering property taxes, a huge concern for residents across the state.
Yeah, over time, Republicans have forced the funding for public school to shift from the state, which we really should be responsible for public education, onto local property taxpayers. And that's really putting the squeeze on housing prices for people across the state, especially seniors. And even worse, it's creating this divisive cycle of referendums where you've got seniors working to stay in their homes, pitted against their own grandkids' schools. So if we want to stop that cycle, we have to appropriately fund schools from the state, which we can absolutely do if we make sure that we're stopping the corporate tax breaks that Republicans have put in place over the last 15 years for big polluters, if we restore the pre-Walker era fair progressive tax system for multimillionaires and billionaires. And by the way, we can also have early childhood education paid for by legalizing cannabis. Most importantly for public education, though, we have to bring the voucher scheme to a responsible end. We cannot keep diverting billions of dollars in every single budget out of our public schools and into private, unaccountable voucher schools that can discriminate.
Well, and a lot of the reason that I hear when I talk to folks who are school choice advocates or they want to go to a charter school is because they feel like the quality of education isn't as good in public schools. Do you think the quality of instruction in the classroom or after school programs do need to improve? And if so, what is your administration going to do to improve that teacher curriculum?
Well, as the mom and stepmom of 5 and a proud public school graduate, I want our schools to be the best public schools in the nation. And money is not the only thing that our schools need to thrive. But you can't have great public schools without money, right? If you want to attract and retain great teachers, then you better be able to make them be able to afford to stay in teaching and live and not need 2 or 3 additional jobs. We have to make sure that class sizes are small enough that kids get the individual attention that they need, especially in the early grades. Right now, we have taken away so much money from schools over the last 15 years that our school districts and our teachers are really, really squeezed. We know that the most important factor in a kid's success is the quality of the teacher at the front of the classroom. And that is why we have got to make sure that teachers actually have a voice in education policy And I'm really proud to have the backing of WEAC, the state teachers, in this race because they know my commitment to public education. And for me, of course, it is personal.
And I know you mentioned that you want to legalize marijuana to, increase some funding for public schools and, change the corporate tax rate. How do you do that and strike that balance of making sure corporations, millionaires, billionaires are paying their fair share while still convincing them that Wisconsin is a good place to do business?
Republicans have, for years, tried to foist this trickle-down economic myth on the rest of us. We know that when you cut taxes on millionaires and billionaires and big corporations, that money doesn't go back into our economy. It's not like if you and I got a raise and we would be going out to a restaurant or spending that money in the community. It just goes into stock buybacks and bigger executive salaries for those at the very top. We're in a new Gilded Age where working people have never taken home a smaller share of the wealth that we create in American history. And those at the very, very top have never taken home a greater share. So this is about making sure that all of us get to have high quality public education, roads that don't bust the bottom of your car, that we have healthcare that's affordable and accessible, especially in rural areas. We can have that. We can have early childhood education. But we have to make sure that people are paying their fair share because it is not fair for small businesses and working people to be paying the entire cost of those important public services.
If you become governor, though, how do you plan on working with Republicans on that? Because it just seems like it's kind of a non-starter for them in many ways.
Well, Meredith, I'm the only candidate in this race that actually has a track record of again and again being able to work with Republicans. For more than 2 decades, I have been able to turn good common sense and progressive ideas into law at the state level. And there's no other candidate that has a track record like that, including Tom Tiffany.
Well, I do want to kind of switch to some of your beliefs in general. You are a progressive. You've self-described progressive, and Francesca Hong is a DSA candidate. When we were talking off camera, you mentioned you really think it's coming down to you and her. What do you say to the moderate voter who maybe don't really know the difference between a progressive or a Democratic Socialist candidate?
Well, I think the most important thing is who can beat Tiffany? Who can give Wisconsin Democrats our best chance of flipping the legislature, and who can govern the state effectively from day one? I know from my years in state government, but also the majority of my career in the private sector and nonprofit sector as an executive, that we need a governor we can trust. We need someone who will be the adult in the room and make responsible decisions and be willing to work across the aisle when that is the right thing to do to make progress for Wisconsinites. That is a thing that I have shown the ability to do again and again throughout my career in all the different roles that I've held. And it's something that I'm really proud of. Unlike Tom Tiffany, who has been nothing but a rubber stamp for Donald Trump, I am an independent thinker, and I have never hesitated even to hold my own party leadership accountable when I felt that they were wrong. When it comes down to making decisions, I am always going to do the right thing for the long-term interests of the entire state of Wisconsin, even if that's a tougher thing for me to do politically. And I've been able to demonstrate that again and again.
And some of your opponents have had some scandals in the past, or more recently. Francesca Hong going on a couple of very controversial podcasts. Sarah Rodriguez with her fiasco surrounding her campaign finance. Do you think that those types of actions are disqualifying for someone to become governor?
I think that voters need a candidate whom they can trust, and someone who's not going to bring baggage into a general election where we only have 84 days to defeat Donald Trump's handpicked candidate. I am someone who has been a very steady leader in the Wisconsin State Senate and before that in the Assembly. I'm a small business owner and an attorney. I'm a mom and stepmom of 5. I can bring that steady leadership, and I can unite all the different parts of the Democratic Party coalition, from the sort of disaffected young voters who are furious at the status quo, and rightfully so, to the folks who voted for Trump a couple of times and are really feeling the pain of that and ready for a change. I can unite and bring those folks together and deliver us victory in November.
All eyes are on campaign finance reports right now. What are people going to see when they look at yours?
They're going to see that overall in this cycle, I have raised $1.2 million, including the WEAC investment in my independent expenditure. I also have, alongside Hong, the most money still left in the race. The big difference is that I've actually been up on TV statewide for 4 weeks. So I've already been communicating with voters. I have been a very careful steward of my resources. You're not going to find a lot of crazy expenses in my campaign finance reports. And so I will have the money that I need to communicate and compete until the very end. The other thing they're going to find is that my campaign is funded overwhelmingly by Wisconsin grassroots donors. 93% of my money comes from right here in Wisconsin. I do not fund my campaigns with corporate PAC money, and I'm not bought by special interests or millionaires and billionaires.
Overall, why should Wisconsinites elect Kelda Roys to be their next governor of the state?
Because I can beat Tom Tiffany, I can govern on day one, and make the transformative change that we need in this state to fully fund our public schools, to raise wages and lower costs, and to protect our rights and freedoms in this really pivotal moment.
State Senator Kelda Roys and gubernatorial candidate, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.